The baby she hid from the Mafia king. He's mine. Aisha's voice cracked with fear. Raphael's grip tightened, eyes burning with resolve. I won't let anything happen to you. Alarm screamed, shadows moved, and danger closed in from every corner, a hidden pregnancy, a newborn in peril, and a Mafia boss who will risk everything. Can love survive the ultimate betrayal? Or will secrets destroy them all? Welcome back to the Luxury Mafia. I'm Jessica and I hope you're doing well. I'm curious, where are you listening to me from today? Make sure you stay with me till the very end because this story is full of twists you won't want to miss. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And now, let's dive in. Aisha drew a deep breath, letting the tension drain slightly from her shoulders. She glanced at Raphael, gratitude and love flashing in her eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the battles he had fought, the decisions he had made, and the promise of safety he now upheld. In that moment, nothing outside these walls mattered. Only the bond of family, the fragile life cradled against them, and the resolve to face whatever came next. The baby stirred again, tiny arms reaching upward, cooing with innocence untouched by the horrors that surrounded them. Raphael pressed a kiss to the child's forehead, murmuring words of reassurance and protection. You're safe now. You're ours. Every syllable was infused with a vow, a lifeline against the chaos that would inevitably return. Outside, the city waited. Dangerous, unpredictable, teeming with shadows and threats. But Raphael's grip tightened slightly, determination radiating from his posture. This night had shown them the fragility of life and the resilience of love. They were prepared for what would come. No longer passive players in a world ruled by manipulation, power, and fear. Mini cliffhanger. A shadow moved at the window, subtle and fleeting, almost imperceptible. Yet Raphael's instincts, honed by years of survival, recognized the significance instantly. The threat was unresolved, lingering. But this time, they were ready. Together, they would face it, not as isolated targets, but as a united front, bonded by survival, love, and unbreakable will. The room was quiet now, tension easing, but never fully gone. Every heartbeat of the baby, every breath from Aisha, every glance from Raphael was a reminder that they had rewritten the rules of their destiny. Survival was no longer about evasion. It was about choice, action, and the courage to protect what truly mattered. Aisha rested her forehead against Raphael's shoulder, the baby nestled securely between them. She whispered almost to herself, almost to the universe, "We've survived together." Her voice, though soft, carried the weight of triumph, of fear overcome, of new beginnings carved from chaos. Raphael's gaze swept the room one last time, registering every broken chair, every smear of blood, every scattering of documents. The destruction was a testament to the battle they had endured, but also a symbol of endurance, of choices made under fire, of bonds solidified in moments of ultimate peril. He shifted slightly, ensuring the baby's safety, adjusting his hold on Aisha, their connection unbroken. "Nothing will take this from us," he murmured, eyes blazing with protective resolve. "Not him, not anyone. We're together, and that's enough." Aisha's hand rested on his chest, warmth pressing against the thrum of his heartbeat. The city beyond was uncertain, threatening, full of possibilities for danger and deceit. But they had survived the worst. They had each other, and in that they found strength, courage, and determination. The baby yawned, stretching tiny limbs in the safest arms possible. Raphael smiled faintly, a rare softness breaking through the hardened exterior that had faced betrayal, threat, and violence. He whispered, "The world is dangerous, but you'll never face it alone." Aisha allowed herself a rare exhale. Tension slowly leaving her body. Her eyes flicked to the shattered doorway, then to the baby, then to Raphael. They had navigated betrayal, violence, and fear. They had survived the impossible and emerged stronger, united, and ready to face the world together. The shadow at the window shifted again, deliberate, signaling the presence of a threat still lingering, unresolved, watching. But this time, Raphael and Aisha would meet it together. Their bond, fortified by survival, love, and courage, was the shield no darkness could penetrate. The final breaths of tension lingered, the quiet punctuated by the baby's soft cooing, Aisha's steadying heartbeat, and Raphael's vigilant gaze. Together, they had survived betrayal, violence, and near death. Together, they had rewritten their destiny. As dawn crept across the skyline outside, casting pale light over the war-torn clinic, Raphael adjusted his stance, holding both Aisha and the baby close. The shadows beyond the window hinted at future battles. But now they faced them as one, undaunted, united, and ready for whatever came next, making her gasp and cling to Raphael as if he could absorb the pain alongside her. The monitors beeped wildly, a symphony of tension that mirrored her heartbeat. Sweat dripped down her temples, stinging her eyes. Yet she refused to blink away the terror. Every sound, every movement in the room carried meaning. Life, death, hope, despair, intertwined in an impossible knot of urgency. Raphael's eyes never left hers. Scanning, calculating, predicting, ready to react. His jaw clenched as the alarm screamed, a mirrored reflection of his internal panic. He muttered instructions to the nurses, a low commanding cadence that cut through the chaos like a blade. Aisha tried to respond, but her voice failed, swallowed by the pain and fear, leaving her trembling in his grasp. Suddenly, the monitor flatlined. The alarms shrieked louder. A mechanical wail that made her ears ring and her stomach twist. Time seemed to stop. Raphael's grip became iron and his voice cracked as he shouted for the doctors, for the nurses, for anything to keep them alive. The room spun in a haze of fluorescent light, sweat and adrenaline, each second stretching unbearably. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. Terror freezing her body even as her maternal instinct screamed at her to fight, to survive. Raphael's face was a mask of controlled fury. Eyes dark, unyielding, refusing to allow panic to govern their fate. He whispered her name again, over and over, a lifeline in the chaos, a tether to sanity and survival. Outside, the world waited, indifferent and threatening. But inside, in this small, suffocating room, everything depended on a fragile line on a screen, on the strength of one man and the will of one woman to survive the storm that had finally caught up to them. Aisha's vision tunneled, heart hammering as Raphael's eyes met hers in silent urgency. Then the room shook, the floor rattling with the unmistakable sound of heavy boots pounding closer, and a shadow fell across the doorway. The shadow across the doorway stretched long and threatening as Raphael's eyes locked on the figure emerging from the hallway. Every muscle in his body tensed, instinct and training taking over, while Aisha's grip on his hand tightened as if holding on could keep the world from crumbling around them. The room still rang with the shrill alarms, each beep slicing through the air like a blade. But Raphael barely noticed, focused entirely on the threat that had finally breached their fragile sanctuary. He pivoted slightly, shielding Aisha with his body, scanning every inch of the doorway for movement, for weapons, for the telltale signs of Jonas's presence. His pulse pounded in his ears, a relentless drumbeat of anger and fear, a rhythm he had not felt since the darkest days of his rise to power. Every instinct screamed at him to act, to eliminate the threat before it could harm her or their child. Yet he knew he had to stay calculated. Rash moves here could cost them everything. "Where were you all this time?" His voice, low but piercing, cut through the chaos, reverberating against the sterile walls of the clinic. The question wasn't just for Aisha. It was for the months of secrets, the lies and the betrayals that had festered while he remained blind. Pain and anger collided inside him. A storm he had kept at bay for years now unleashed in a single moment, raw and unfiltered. Aisha's lungs burned as she tried to answer. Words caught in her throat like fish trapped in a net. Every syllable was heavy with guilt, with fear of his wrath. Yet she knew she had no choice. Silence could mean death. The monitors beeped frantically, reminding her that the baby's life hung in the balance. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his gaze, even as tears blurred her vision. Finally, in a tremulous whisper, she revealed the truth she had buried for months. "Jonas. He knew. He threatened me. He forced me to leave before you could know. Before you could." Her voice broke, trailing off into the chaos of alarms and shouted instructions. Yet every word was a dagger to her own heart, exposing her deepest fears. Raphael's jaw tightened, every second a fresh stab of betrayal. Not hers, but Jonas's. His hands clenched into fists. Yet he controlled the impulse to strike, to end the man who had destroyed so much of their lives. His mind raced, calculating, predicting, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The baby's monitors screamed another warning, pulling his attention back to Aisha's trembling body, to the fragile life they both were sworn to protect. The doctor moved rapidly, preparing for an emergency delivery, tension snapping around them like exposed wires. Equipment clanged, hands flew over buttons and knobs. Yet Raphael felt the storm outside the room pressing closer, a shadow of death that could break through any moment. He scanned the corridors with razor-sharp precision. Every footstep, every creak of the floorboards, a potential threat, a signal that their sanctuary was compromised. Footsteps pounded in the corridor. Precise, deliberate, too measured to be coincidence. Raphael's hand slipped instinctively into his jacket, brushing against the familiar cold steel of his concealed weapon. Training, experience, and sheer instinct fused into a single focus. Protect her. Protect the baby. Neutralize the threat. He moved silently, muscles coiled like a predator, eyes never leaving the door through which the danger approached. Someone's here, he muttered under his breath, a low growl of warning and anticipation. His voice was steady, but the edge of tension cut through a razor that vibrated through the room. Aisha's fingers clung to his arm, trembling. Yet she drew courage from his presence, from the iron resolve that radiated off him in waves. The door splintered under a violent impact, wood cracking and falling away as smoke and dust filled the air. Raphael reacted instantly, stepping in front of Aisha, weapon raised, senses alert to every motion. His breath was sharp, calculated. Every inhale a measured rhythm of control in the maelstrom of fear that had taken over the room. And then the voice hissed, familiar, malicious, dripping with arrogance. Found you, Jonas smirked from the doorway, emerging like a specter from the shadows. His presence was a physical punch, a living embodiment of every threat Aisha had feared for months. The smile on his face was cruel, predatory, and Raphael's gut twisted with anger and protective instinct all at once. Jonas stepped forward, slow, deliberate, eyes scanning the room with the confidence of a man who believed he owned the moment. The lives, the outcome. Raphael's finger tightened on his weapon, every muscle in his body ready to act at a heartbeat's notice. The baby stirred in Aisha's arms, a small whimper that cut through the tension and reminded Raphael of the stakes, of the fragile innocence at risk. Aisha's mind raced, every scenario she had imagined in her darkest nights flooding back in vivid clarity. Would Raphael forgive her for hiding the truth? Could they survive the night? Survive Jonas's wrath? Survive the storm that had finally caught up to them? Each question was a dagger twisting deeper as she fought to steady her racing pulse. Jonas's smirk widened, sensing her fear, relishing the control he believed he wielded. You can't hide from me, he said, voice low, smooth, and venomous. The words hung in the air. Each one a calculated strike against her courage, against Raphael's control, against the fragile hope they clung to. Raphael shifted, moving between Jonas and Aisha, a living shield. His voice was steel. Step closer and you'll regret it, he warned. Every syllable carrying authority, danger, and the promise of retribution. Jonas laughed softly, a sound that grated against every nerve. But Raphael didn't falter. He didn't blink. Every second was a measured battle. Every heartbeat a declaration that he would not allow fear to govern this moment. The room trembled under the weight of tension. Nurses ducked. Doctors shouted orders. And every sound, every creak, every alarm added to the crescendo of danger. Aisha pressed the baby closer, eyes wide, clinging to Raphael's arm as if it could anchor her against the storm of betrayal, threat, and fear. Raphael's mind raced, scanning every exit, every potential weapon, every angle of attack. Jonas moved with the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. Yet Raphael's resolve was a living barrier, a promise written in muscle and steel. The baby cooped softly, oblivious to the chaos, a fragile heartbeat of life that anchored them both to the present, to the fight, to survival. Jonas suddenly stepped faster, a flash of motion that made Raphael's reflexes fire. The two men locked eyes, predator and predator, each calculating the other's next move with deadly precision. The tension stretched to a breaking point. Every second an eternity. Aisha's breath caught, eyes darting between the two men, her own fear of physical weight pressing down on her chest. Jonas grinned, revealing a hidden pistol tucked beneath his coat, his finger brushing the trigger. And in that heartbeat, Raphael realized the fight for their lives had only just begun. 3. The moment stretched like a living nightmare, a heartbeat suspended between chaos and clarity. Aisha's scream tore through the room, sharp and raw, cutting through alarms, shouting and the pounding footsteps outside. Pain and relief collided in her chest. Her entire being focused on the tiny life now thrust into the world with all its fragile screaming force. Raphael froze. Every muscle, every nerve, every instinct screamed at him. This was no ordinary child. This was his son, his blood, his reason to fight. A gasp escaped his lips as the realization hammered into him like lightning. The room around him blurred, sounds blending into one deafening hum, but his gaze remained locked on the infant, cradled against Aisha's shaking arms. The baby's tiny fists flailed, weak but relentless, the small, sharp cries echoing like defiance against the chaos. Raphael's trembling hand reached out, brushing the infant's fragile fingers with reverence and terror, an almost sacred touch connecting generations. Awe, fear, and disbelief tangled in his chest, a storm far more powerful than anything outside the walls of this clinic. "He looks like me," he whispered, voice breaking under the weight of what he had just witnessed. Every syllable carried the shock of realization. The gravity of loss and reunion compressed into a single breath. Aisha's own tears streamed unchecked, stinging her eyes as relief mixed with guilt, a bitter cocktail she could not swallow. She had hidden him, shielded him, and yet now the truth lay bare before Raphael, raw and undeniable. Raphael's gaze snapped from the baby to Aisha, reading every tremor, every subtle twitch of fear, every pulse of unspoken emotion. Her betrayal, though necessary, gnawed at him. Yet it could not compete with the ferocity of the love he felt for the child now in front of him. His protective instincts flared, a living shield against everything the world could throw at them. Jonas's presence was a poison in the air. A palpable tension that vibrated like a living entity. Raphael crouched low, angling himself between mother, child, and threat. Every motion precise, trained, instinctual. His eyes flicked from shadow to shadow, scanning for danger, predicting movement before it occurred. Every heartbeat was measured. Every breath a tool for survival. The files Jonas had thrown down moments before told a story Raphael had only begun to grasp. Threats, manipulations, months of lies meticulously designed to keep them apart, to control, to harm, to claim. Each document a dagger to his gut. Each revelation a reminder of the world they had entered together. And yet only now fully confronted. Aisha's pulse raced quick and erratic, mirroring the chaos around her. She realized with cold horror how close danger had lurked all along. How every step she had taken to hide the pregnancy had been a step into a trap carefully laid. The realization brought a new layer of fear, yet also a strange, fierce determination. She would not allow the past to consume the present, no matter the cost. Raphael's eyes narrowed, scanning the corridor beyond the shattered door. Every detail magnified, the faintest shuffle of feet, the whisper of a jacket brushing against metal, every sound carried meaning. His mind raced through scenarios, contingencies, probabilities. His training as a Mafia boss meshed with his instinct as a father. Every angle was accounted for, every threat anticipated. Suddenly, the door to the hallway rattled again. A subtle vibration that set Raphael's teeth on edge. He pressed himself closer to Aisha. The baby now cradled firmly against his chest, a living shield. His mind predicted movement, anticipated violence, and yet he forced himself to remain calm, to act with precision. One wrong decision now could shatter everything. A tiny whimper from the baby brought Raphael's focus back, grounding him in the present. He whispered softly, fingers brushing the soft skin against his chest. "It's okay. It's okay. I've got you." Each word was deliberate. A balm against the storm, a tether to life amidst the chaos that threatened to engulf them. Jonas's men rounded the corner, weapons glinting, eyes cold, and unreadable. The flash of metal reflected harsh light, and Raphael's pulse spiked. Each step the men took seemed synchronized, precise, deliberate, a mechanical march toward destruction. Time slowed for Raphael. Every detail amplified. The angle of their shoulders, the twitch of fingers near triggers, the deadly focus in their eyes. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. Her body shook, not just from the pain of labor now fading, but from the raw, unfiltered terror of the moment. She clutched Raphael's arm instinctively, finding strength in his presence, courage in his resolve. The baby stirred again, a tiny squeak of protest that made her heart lurch, even as fear threatened to paralyze her. Raphael's mind worked faster than thought. He shifted slightly, positioning himself as both shield and weapon, every muscle coiled, ready to spring, to defend, to strike. His eyes flicked from Aisha to the baby to the approaching men, calculating angles, predicting trajectories, preparing for confrontation. There was no room for hesitation. Jonas's voice slithered into the room, low and venomous. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" The words dripped with malice. Each syllable a calculated sting designed to unsettle, to provoke fear. Raphael's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing into slits. Every instinct screamed at him to strike. Yet he restrained himself, waiting for the perfect moment to act. A subtle movement from the men, a twitch of a finger, a shifting of weight was all Raphael needed. In a single fluid motion, he shifted. Weapon raised, body angled to intercept the first assault. His breathing was steady, mind clear, instincts honed over years of training and survival guiding him. The baby stirred again, tiny fingers grasping at the air, fragile and defiant. Raphael's free hand brushed the infant's cheek, a silent promise of protection, a tether against the world's brutality. Aisha watched, wide-eyed, heart hammering, drawing courage from his focus, his unwavering presence. The first shot rang out, a deafening crack that echoed through the corridor. Raphael's head snapped toward the sound, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. The bullet ricocheted harmlessly off a metal cart. But the message was clear. The fight had begun, and there would be no turning back. Aisha gasped, pressing herself against Raphael, the baby now between them, a living shield and the center of everything they fought to protect. Raphael's eyes burned with intensity, calculating, precise, ready to respond. Each second stretched, the world narrowing to movement, sound, and survival. A shadow detached itself from the corner faster than the eye could follow. And Raphael realized with a cold certainty that Jonas had not come alone, and the battle for their lives was about to escalate far beyond anything they had prepared for. For the shadow that had detached itself from the corridor moved with a calm, deliberate precision that made Raphael's jaw tighten. Every movement, every breath, every step seemed measured, practiced, and utterly devoid of hesitation. And then, emerging fully into view, was a figure Raphael had once considered a friend, a man whose loyalty he had trusted, whose counsel he had relied upon, whose bond he had believed unbreakable. Jonas stepped forward, and yet he was not alone. His men fanned out behind him, weapons glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights. Each one mirrored their leader, cold precision, eyes fixed, bodies tense, ready to strike. But it wasn't the weapons that drew Raphael's attention first. It was the chilling smile on Jonas's face. A smile that carried venom, deceit, and the audacity of betrayal. In his hand, Jonas held a folder thick with papers and documents, each one promising to unravel everything Raphael and Aisha had fought to protect. "You should have trusted me," Jonas said, voice smooth, dripping with false pity, as if delivering a lesson rather than threatening death. Each word slithered through the room, a calculated attempt to unsettle, to divide, to weaken, resolve. Raphael's fists clenched instinctively, knuckles white as steel, rage and disbelief collided. The old wounds of friendship tearing open again in the face of this audacious betrayal. Years of loyalty, of shared secrets, of trust, shattered by greed, lust for power, and twisted protection. He realized painfully that every calculated move, every manipulated action had been orchestrated to destroy him from within, to destabilize him at the moment he was most vulnerable. Aisha's stomach knotted, a deep, visceral ache that echoed the betrayal before her eyes. Every lie she had endured, every manipulation she had barely survived, now had a face, a tangible form she could see and fear. Jonas's presence was more than a threat. It was the embodiment of every shadow she had fled, every threat she had hidden from, and every danger that had stalked her for months. "Love makes you blind," Jonas hissed, tossing another document onto the floor with deliberate disdain. The paper landed with a muted slap, the words and images within exposing months of secrets, manipulations, and falsehoods. Raphael's mind raced, absorbing the implications even as his chest heaved with controlled fury. He understood in that instant that destroying Jonas was inevitable, but the immediate priority was clear. Aisha and the baby had to remain unharmed. The corridor seemed to contract around them, the walls pressing inward with the weight of threat and tension. Every echo of footsteps, every metallic glint from weapons, every breath seemed amplified, a drumbeat of impending danger. Raphael crouched slightly, shielding Aisha and their son with his body, eyes scanning, predicting, calculating. There was no room for error, no tolerance for distraction. The baby stirred again, tiny fists brushing against Aisha's chest, a fragile heartbeat tethered to their survival. Aisha clutched the child closer, drawing courage from Raphael's unwavering focus, yet still trembling under the weight of fear. Each moment stretched into eternity, a fragile balance between life and potential catastrophe. One of Jonas's men shifted suddenly, the subtle movement signaling intent, a silent declaration of aggression. Raphael's gaze locked on the weapon raised, pointed directly at the baby's crib, aiming at the fragile life that anchored them both. Time slowed in that heartbeat. Every detail magnified, the angle of the arm, the tightening of fingers on the trigger, the glint of steel reflecting the overhead light. Raphael's hand shot forward instinctively, catching the weapon mid-motion, redirecting it away from the crib in a fluid motion, honed by years of combat and survival. The man's eyes widened in shock, a fraction too late, and Raphael's grip tightened like iron. A warning hiss escaped his lips. "Touch them, and it ends now." The air vibrated with lethal intent, a promise that left no room for miscalculation. Jonas's smirk did not falter. "Predictable," he said, voice low, measured, as if mocking Raphael's protective instincts, "but necessary. I expected nothing less." Each word was a calculated jab, a reminder that he had studied every weakness, every reaction, and was ready to exploit them fully. Aisha pressed herself against Raphael's side, shivering. Sweat and fear mingling on her brow. The baby whimpered again, a fragile tiny sound that made Raphael's heart lurch. He whispered softly, a protective mantra. "It's okay. It's okay. Stay with me." His hand brushed the child's cheek with gentle precision. A lifeline of safety amid chaos. Jonas shifted the folder in his hand, revealing additional documents, photos, letters, transactions, all carefully orchestrated to destabilize, to fracture trust, to manipulate. The evidence was damning, exposing alliances, betrayals, secrets no one should have known. Raphael's mind worked in overdrive, compartmentalizing rage, strategy, and instinct simultaneously. "Do you really think you can protect them?" Jonas taunted, taking a step closer, deliberate, confident. Each stride was measured. A predator closing in on prey, testing boundaries, pushing limits. Raphael mirrored the movement, shifting to keep his family shielded, eyes scanning the men surrounding them, calculating every potential strike, every angle of attack. Aisha's breath caught as Jonas flicked his wrist, sending more documents fluttering across the floor, scattering chaos in the sterile corridor. Each sheet was a reminder of manipulation, of lies, of months of threats designed to break her, to break them all. She pressed the baby closer, a silent plea for protection, for survival, for the storm to pass without devastation. Raphael's jaw clenched. Every document, every revelation only fueled his determination. He would not allow Jonas to harm them. Not now, not ever. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of his protective instinct, the weight of responsibility that pressed down like steel. Jonas stepped closer still, voice calm, predatory. You've been hiding, running, thinking you're safe. But safety is an illusion. You never had it. The words dripped venom. Each one a deliberate stab at courage, at hope, at the fragile bond between Aisha and Raphael. A subtle movement caught Raphael's eye. Another one of Jonas's men shifting behind a medical cart, weapon poised. Reflexively, Raphael adjusted, shifting the baby closer to his chest, angling himself between threat and vulnerable life. Every heartbeat was measured, a countdown to potential disaster. Yet, he refused to falter. The corridor seemed impossibly long, echoing with footsteps, threats, and the faint sound of the baby's whimper. Aisha clung to Raphael's arm, drawing courage, but still trembling. The gravity of the betrayal, the manipulation, the danger, they all collided in one overwhelming wave. Raphael's eyes widened as a second shadow darted across the corridor, faster than perception, signaling that Jonas had more surprises hidden, threats they had not yet accounted for. And the fight for survival was about to escalate into something far deadlier than they had imagined. The moment Jonas's men surged forward, Raphael's body became a tempest, coiled and precise, every motion a deadly dance of protection and survival. His muscles tensed like steel springs as he shoved one of the attackers aside, the impact resonating up his arm. Pain slicing through his shoulder, but he ignored it. Adrenaline drowned out every ache, every fear. There was only Aisha, the baby, and the need to escape alive. He scooped the baby into his arms, cradling him as if the fragile life pressed against his chest were made of glass. Tiny fists flexed instinctively, a heartbeat of innocence against the storm of violence surrounding them. Raphael's eyes flicked to Aisha, who clung to his back like a shadow, her nails digging into the fabric of his coat. Terror and relief collided in her gaze, a maelstrom of emotion that mirrored his own. "We can't stay," he hissed, voice low, sharp, carrying both command and urgency. His glance swept over the hallway now flooded with Jonas's men, every step echoing like a drumbeat of death. Each corridor stretched endlessly, a gauntlet lined with threats, every echo a potential strike against them. Raphael's mind raced, calculating angles, exits, and contingencies. Each step a gamble with stakes higher than life itself. Aisha's trembling voice barely carried over the chaos. "Raphael, my mother," her words faltered as terror overtook her, eyes wide with fear. He tightened his grip on her, pulling her closer against his back. Her mother, someone she had trusted, someone she had believed in, had resurfaced as a potential threat at the most perilous moment. The revelation layered the danger, adding betrayal to the already combustible mix of violence and desperation. Jonas's laughter echoed through the hallways, cruel and taunting, a venomous soundtrack to their flight. "Running won't save you." His words slithered through the corridors, a constant reminder that the night held layers of danger Raphael had not anticipated. Every instinct screamed at him to keep moving, to stay ahead. But the enemy was relentless, their pursuit methodical, unyielding. Raphael pivoted, scooping the baby higher against his chest, scanning exits and alternate routes. Each corridor was a puzzle, each doorway a potential trap. His shoulder throbbed from the graze, a burning reminder of vulnerability. Yet he pressed forward, every step measured, precise, deadly. Aisha's breath hitched behind him, a fragile rhythm that spurred his determination. The baby stirred, tiny cries piercing the chaos. Raphael murmured softly, calming the child even as danger pressed on every side. "It's okay. Stay with me. Stay with us." Every syllable was a lifeline, a thread of connection in a world spinning violently out of control. Aisha pressed herself closer, drawing courage from the sound of his voice, from the assurance radiating from his unwavering presence. The clinic corridors twisted and turned like a maze designed for nightmares. Raphael's boots pounded against the linoleum floors, echoing back at him in distorted rhythms. Doors slammed behind them as Jonas's men pursued relentlessly. Each echo a warning of death's proximity. The world narrowed to movement, breath, and the fragile heartbeat of the child cradled in his arms. Raphael ducked low as a man lunged from the shadows, swinging a metal rod with lethal intent. Reflexes honed over years of combat snapped into action. He twisted, catching the strike mid-motion, using the momentum to shove the attacker aside, sending him crashing into a wall. The corridor became a whirlwind of motion. Every second, a battle between life and annihilation. Aisha whispered, barely audible, recounting fragments of a truth she had hidden. My mother, she fear cracked her voice, the weight of betrayal almost tangible. Raphael adjusted his grip on both her and the baby, realizing the depth of the danger. Threats were not just external. They were woven into their past, into the people she had loved, trusted, and now feared. Jonas's men were not far behind, methodical, relentless, a tide of precision and malice. Their weapons glinted under the flickering lights, each aiming to intercept, to strike, to end the fragile thread of life Raphael guarded with his own. He moved with practiced awareness, anticipating angles, redirecting threats. His mind, a constant calculation of risk versus necessity. A sudden shift of weight behind him signaled another attack. Raphael pivoted, shoving Aisha down behind him for protection as a weapon swished past his shoulder, narrowly missing the baby. The small cries of the child fueled his focus, sharpening his movements, his senses attuned to every heartbeat, every rustle, every shadow, every corner held a potential ambush. Every turn revealed another threat. Yet Raphael pressed forward, calculating each footstep with precision, weaving between danger and opportunity. Adrenaline coursed through his veins, pain momentarily forgotten, his resolve hardening with each passing second. The echo of Jonas's laughter returned, bouncing off the walls like a cruel drumbeat. You can't escape me. The words were a whip across the tension of the night, an assertion of control. Yet Raphael ignored the taunt. Control now belonged to him, to his instincts, to the unyielding need to protect his family. The baby squirmed, small cries of protest piercing the cacophony. Raphael's hand steadied the child, murmuring soft words of reassurance. A fragile shield of humanity against the storm of violence. Aisha clung to his back, eyes wide, gripping tightly, trembling but present. A silent partner in the flight through shadows. Footsteps pounded behind them. Closer, faster, the rhythm of pursuit relentless. Raphael's gaze flicked to an emergency exit ahead. A potential salvation. A doorway into the uncertain night. Every muscle coiled as he prepared for the final dash. Every sense alert to the slightest hint of attack. The corridor narrowed, forcing them into a single line of motion, a funnel of vulnerability. Raphael adjusted, turning his body to shield the baby, one hand steadying Aisha against his back, the other ready to strike, block, or intercept any threat. Each heartbeat echoed like a drum of survival, each breath a testament to willpower and instinct. As they reached the emergency exit, Aisha froze, her blood running cold. The shadow in the doorway was unmistakable. Her mother weapon raised. A silent challenge that transformed their desperate flight into a confrontation of betrayal, loyalty, and raw, unpredictable danger. The doorway loomed like a wall of ice, the threshold between escape and annihilation. Raphael stepped forward, muscles coiled, a living barrier between the fragile life in his arms and the cold, calculated threat that had emerged from Aisha's past. The baby nestled against his chest. Tiny heartbeat echoing in perfect rhythm with his own, a fragile anchor in the storm of chaos surrounding them. His shoulder throbbed, the burning pain from the graze a constant reminder of the night's violence. Yet he ignored it, focusing entirely on the immediate danger. Each step was deliberate, measured, a statement of intent. There would be no hesitation. There would be no faltering. The line was drawn, the choice made. Anyone who threatened them would face his wrath. You touch them and I end you. Raphael growled, his voice a low rumble of authority and lethal promise. Eyes locked on his mother's cold, unyielding stare, he made the threat tangible, a palpable force radiating from his posture, his expression, his very being. Time seemed to stretch as the tension crystallized into something almost physical, pressing against the walls of the corridor. Aisha's heart pounded violently, a drumbeat of fear, hope, and resolve. For the first time since the nightmare began, she did not step back. She stood beside Raphael, trembling but firm, drawing strength from his presence, from the unshakable determination radiating from him. Every instinct screamed caution, but she forced herself to stand tall, a silent declaration that fear would not dominate them. Her mother's finger tensed on the trigger, trembling slightly as her eyes flicked between Raphael, Aisha, and the baby. Every muscle in her body screamed readiness, a predator poised to strike. Yet beneath the steel, uncertainty flickered, a recognition of the bond forged through adversity, a subtle hesitation in the shadow of her own ambition and pride. Raphael's gaze hardened, reading the moment, sensing hesitation. Exploiting the fraction of a second where the balance of power wavered. He shifted subtly, positioning the baby slightly higher. His free hand ready to intercept, to strike, to protect. Every motion was precise, fluid, honed by years of instinct, training, and the raw primal need to survive. Aisha's breath caught as Jonas's men approached from the corridors behind them. They moved with deliberate caution now. A hesitation that betrayed their understanding of Raphael's presence and resolve. Weapons were raised, eyes calculating, yet uncertainty had crept in. They had underestimated him once. Never again. A whisper from Aisha cut through the tension, barely audible, yet filled with conviction. "We won't let fear control us anymore." Her words were small, yet they carried weight, a fragile defiance against the storm of threat and betrayal surrounding them. Raphael's eyes flicked to her, gratitude and pride mingling with the relentless drive to protect. The baby stirred, tiny cries punctuating the heavy air. Raphael whispered softly, murmuring words of reassurance and protection. "Stay with me. Stay safe. I've got you." Each syllable was deliberate, a tether of humanity amid the escalating tension, a lifeline against chaos and violence. Her mother's finger twitched imperceptibly, a subtle signal that she was calculating, balancing aggression with caution. Raphael's eyes narrowed, every micro-movement studied, every heartbeat anticipating the slightest shift in intent. The room seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with anticipation, threat, and unspoken histories. Jonas's men advanced cautiously, the metallic click of weapons against walls, the echo of boots in the sterile corridor, a rhythmic warning. Raphael's stance was immovable, a living shield for the fragile life before him, yet ready to strike at the first misstep, the first hint of violence directed at his family. The shadows shifted at the edges of the doorway, a dance of threat and possibility. Raphael's mind calculated trajectories, angles, and contingencies with the precision of a strategist and the reflexes of a predator. Every muscle tensed, every sense heightened as the line between survival and catastrophe narrowed to inches. Aisha's gaze flicked between Raphael, her mother, and the baby. Understanding the gravity of the moment, she drew courage from the infant's innocence. The steadying presence of Raphael, and the unspoken bond between them. The air crackled with tension. Every second, a knife edge of uncertainty. Raphael's shoulder burned, yet he ignored the pain, pressing forward a literal and figurative shield. Every inch of his body radiated lethal intent. A promise etched in motion. Anyone who dared touch them would face consequences unimaginable. His presence alone created a barrier, a line no one dared cross. A subtle shift in the doorway drew Raphael's attention. A micro-movement almost imperceptible, signaling intent, a hint of aggression. His free hand moved instinctively, a flash of steel, positioning readiness. The tension reached a peak where seconds felt like minutes, and the fragile balance teetered on the edge of violence. The sudden report of a gunshot shattered the tense silence. Time seemed to freeze as smoke curled through the corridor. Raphael's head snapped toward the sound, heart hammering, instinct screaming. Yet the outcome remained unknown, hanging over them like the edge of a knife, leaving the reader suspended in anticipation. The acrid smoke lingered in the corridor, curling around overturned carts, shattered doors, and broken furniture. Every surface bore the scars of chaos, metallic tang of blood mingling with the sterile smell of the clinic. Raphael moved carefully through the debris, the baby cradled close to his chest, a living anchor of fragile hope amidst the ruin. Aisha's hand found his arm, fingers gripping tightly, her gaze steady despite the storm that had just passed. The resolve in her eyes mirrored Raphael's own. A reflection of battles fought, fears confronted, and survival won through sheer will and love. They had endured betrayal, danger, and darkness. And yet here they stood, unbroken together. His mother lay slumped on the floor, weapon clattering beside her. The iron-hard control she had wielded for decades now lay in ruin. Her dominance reduced to a silent, haunting echo. Raphael's chest tightened. Not with relief, not entirely, but with the gravity of what had been lost and what had been reclaimed. Family ties broken, loyalty tested, and yet survival had forged a new path. The baby cooped softly, tiny breaths vibrating against Raphael's chest. Life, fragile and untainted, persisted amidst the wreckage. Raphael's hands moved over the child instinctively, checking, cradling, protecting. Every movement was deliberate, precise, a silent promise that this child would be shielded from the shadows that had haunted the night. Jonas had fled, leaving behind a trail of chaos, unanswered threats, and pieces of a plan that had almost destroyed them. Raphael's mind remained vigilant. He knew this was not the end. Jonas would return, and the web of manipulation would not unravel without effort, without confrontation. But for now, the storm had passed, and survival had a face. Aisha and their son. Aisha's hands wrapped around her son, breath deepening with each passing moment. She felt the strength she had buried for months rise within her, a quiet, unyielding force. Her past fears, the manipulation, the betrayals they had forged her resilience. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a mother, a fighter, a partner in a future they would now face together. Raphael whispered softly, his voice low but steady, carrying the weight of promise and protection. "We decide our fate now." His arms circled Aisha. A shield, a declaration, a bond. The baby nestled between them. Tiny fingers brushing at Raphael's chest, as if recognizing the safety and warmth of their united front. The room, though chaotic, felt suspended in a strange stillness. Broken glass reflected fragments of the overhead lights, shadows dancing across the walls in jagged patterns. Raphael's eyes scanned, every muscle coiled, every sense alert, but tempered by a profound relief. They had survived the impossible. Aisha's teeth clenched, white-knuckled against the sharp spike of pain that tore through her abdomen, stealing her breath like a thief in the dark. Every muscle tensed, every nerve screaming as if the world itself were collapsing around her. Her pulse thundered in her ears, a frantic rhythm that matched the storm raging inside her. The quiet town she had fled to for safety. The life she had painstakingly built to escape her past, felt impossibly fragile in this moment. Each street she had walked, each familiar face she had smiled at now seemed like a fragile facade waiting to crumble. The small clinic loomed ahead, its whitewashed walls and flickering fluorescent lights. A stark contrast to the chaos gripping her body. She gripped the edges of her coat, forcing herself to walk steadily, even as the contractions clawed upward with cruel precision. Every shadow in the hallways twisted into a potential threat, every passing nurse or patient a possible messenger of doom. Jonas could be anywhere, watching, waiting, ready to destroy everything she had fought to protect. Her hand instinctively brushed the scar on her wrist, tracing the faded lines that only Raphael would recognize, a reminder of promises made and of mistakes that could never be undone. She cursed herself for leaving traces, for believing she could ever escape the past entirely. The pain in her belly intensified, a burning wave that made her vision blur. But she forced herself forward, counting each step, each breath, like a mantra to hold the panic at bay. The receptionist gave her a cursory glance. Tired eyes scanning a clipboard. But Aisha barely registered it. She fumbled with her bag, pulling out a folder with the false name she had chosen, the alias carefully constructed to avoid detection. Her heartbeat thumped erratically, echoing in her chest like a warning drum. And she prayed that no one would look too closely at the trembling fingers that barely managed to sign the forms. A subtle creak of a floorboard made her freeze. She swallowed hard, forcing her breathing to slow, willing herself not to betray the fear that threatened to consume her. Every muscle in her body screamed to run. Yet she could not leave. Not now. The baby inside her was counting on her survival, even as every instinct screamed danger. Her thoughts drifted briefly to Raphael, his eyes so piercing and knowing, so full of unspoken emotions she had long tried to bury. Could he ever forgive her for disappearing? Would he even know the truth in time? The nurse approached, clipboard in hand, eyes flicking to Aisha's wristband. A small frown creased her brow as she scanned the barcode, hesitation flickering in her gaze. Something about this patient didn't sit right. Some detail that didn't align. Aisha's heart skipped a beat. Every second stretched endlessly as she prayed the scrutiny wouldn't last long. The nurse's finger hovered over the keyboard, ready to type, to ask, to pierce the fragile veil of her false identity. Suddenly, the door slammed open with a thunderous crash. Heavy boots echoed across the sterile floor, a sound that made Aisha's blood run cold, yet paradoxically ignited a spark of hope. Raphael Cortez appeared, larger than life, a storm contained in a man. His eyes dark and unyielding, scanned the room, and landed on her swollen belly with a precision that cut through every layer of her fear. The room seemed to freeze in his presence, the flickering lights casting long shadows across his angular face. Aisha. His voice was calm. Almost deceptively so, but there was a fracture in it. A raw edge that made her chest tighten. Her heart lurched, a violent flutter as memories and fears collided. He was here. He had found her. And yet, the question burned hotter than the pain in her abdomen. He's mine. Her lips barely formed the words, a trembling whisper, but it carried weight beyond measure. Raphael's gaze didn't waver. Dark eyes scanning her face for answers, for confirmation, for a truth she could scarcely admit aloud. The monitor beside her suddenly screamed, a shrill wail that ripped through the room. The baby's heartbeat dipped sharply, a jagged line that mirrored the panic clawing through her chest. Cold sweat beaded on her forehead and her breath caught in ragged gasps as nurses shouted instructions. Hands moving quickly, efficiently, but too fast, too loud, too chaotic. Panic surged through the room like an electric current. Raphael's hand shot out, gripping hers with an intensity that made her fingers ache, but grounded her nonetheless. "Hold on," he commanded, voice sharp, unwavering. "I won't let anything happen to you." His presence was a tether, pulling her out of the spiraling fear. Yet, it only amplified the gravity of the situation. Every second stretched like an eternity. Aisha's vision blurred with tears. She couldn't yet shed, the contractions relentless, gnawing at her stamina, at her courage. Raphael crouched beside her, hand unwavering, eyes scanning every detail, every shadow that moved in the periphery. "Stay with me," he urged, voice low and firm, threading urgency and reassurance together like a lifeline. She nodded, barely able to whisper agreement, fingers digging into his palm as the world narrowed to pain, heartbeat, and the sound of alarms. A sudden shift in the monitor drew Raphael's attention instantly. The baby's heartbeat faltered again, and the line dipped dangerously low. Every instinct he had screamed at him to act, to do something, anything. And yet, the doctors were already moving, preparing for emergency intervention. Aisha's mind raced, fragmented thoughts colliding with fear and disbelief. She had imagined this moment countless times, each scenario ending differently, none as terrifyingly real as this. Her hand clutched Raphael's tighter, nails digging into skin, an anchor in the storm. Sweat drenched her hairline, sticking strands to her forehead. Yet she barely noticed, too consumed by the urgency and by Raphael's presence. He whispered something under his breath she couldn't hear, but it didn't matter. The determination in his eyes said it all. He would fight for her, for their child, for the life they had both risked everything to protect. The nurse's face was pale, eyes wide as she adjusted the monitors and prepared the delivery room equipment. Each movement was meticulous yet frantic, a balancing act between calm protocol and raw, adrenaline-fueled panic. The fluorescent lights flickered, shadows dancing on the walls like specters of the past, of threats unseen, of secrets yet to be revealed. Aisha's chest heaved. Every inhale a sharp dagger of pain. Every exhale a shaky thread of hope. Raphael's grip on her hand tightened, a silent promise. "We're not losing this," he murmured, voice barely above the alarms, but resolute, anchored in certainty. His other hand brushed the fine hair from her sweat-soaked forehead. A fleeting touch that carried the weight of every unsaid word, every unspoken apology, every buried emotion. A flicker of guilt passed over her features, knowing she had hidden this from him, fearing his wrath, fearing his heartbreak. The door rattled as if testing itself, a reminder that the world outside could not be ignored. Every second brought danger closer, a tangible presence that pressed against the fragile sanctuary of the small clinic. Jonas could be outside watching, waiting. Aisha's mind raced, conjuring images of betrayal and violence. Yet Raphael's presence acted like a shield, a thin, fragile wall of protection against the storm. Another contraction tore through her. Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.